Welcome back everyone for an Eddie adoration, Stranger Things 4 Watch Party. Eddie Munson was easily the most lovable breakout character of Season 4. Like a teddy bear, so many people wanted to hug him. Some would argue he's even more adorable than this dog. I don't know, it's close. But then he died. What the heck? That sucks. There's a lot of interesting theories about why Eddie may still be alive, and we'll get to those eventually. But for now, let's look at why so many of you love Eddie so much. In a show full of geeks playing Dungeons & Dragons, this Dungeons & Dragons playing freak wins you over. What makes him different or unique? For that matter, is there any tangible difference between the geek and the freak? They're both derogatory terms, and in this context, they're all just Dungeons & Dragons playing high schoolers. Well, certainly Judd Apatow thought so, and truthfully, there is something a little different about Eddie. And while the differences between a freak and a geek may be too subtle for the lay people to understand, we can certainly dive into Eddie himself. From the beginning, you see that Eddie will not conform himself for outside approval. He's reading a Newsweek article about the dangers of Dungeons & Dragons. Experts and researchers have concluded it leads to all these horrible bad things, and the world needs to do something about it. Eddie mocks it. He doesn't care. He knows that the experts and researchers just say stuff the people in charge want to hear. But then he says it right out.
It's forced conformity. That's what's killing the kid!
Forced conforming. That is what Eddie loudly rejects. Eddie may be a character set in the 1980s, but certainly his words are just as relevant today. Social media has turned so much of society and everyday life into a non-stop high school popularity contest. You can't even talk about what makes a good Star Wars show or whether or not House of the Dragon will be any good without being hassled and attacked. You just want to be you. You want to like what you like. You want to dislike what you dislike. Is it so much to ask? How often do you overly praise something maybe not so deserving or remain quiet about utter trash just because the idea of speaking against the crowd, not conforming to the masses, is a little unsettling, scary even? Which brings us back to our introduction to Eddie. Yeah, D&D players are being blamed as the source of all society's problems. Scapegoats as they were. He rejects it and points out the absurdity. In a good story, it's not just words but actions, and here Eddie climbs on the freaking table. It's the opposite of hiding who you are. In fact, if I had one criticism of this scene, it's that Eddie walking down the lunch table didn't make more of a commotion. Either way, Eddie just wanders down the table, proudly showing who he is, and he doesn't care. He has no desire to conform. He also points out all the groups which are accepted by this social conformity. What's interesting is the first two are the kids in the band and the science kids. Now you already know those two groups aren't exactly known for being the highest in high school social life profile. They're not part of the popular crowd, but that's just it. It's not about the approved popular versus the unpopular kids. It's different, more insidious. His complaint is that society is accepting everyone but them. It's okay if you're into math and science and not popular as long as you don't associate with them. Or yeah, you may be a band dork and worry about marching band, but at least you're not one of them. And definitely the popular kids will have nothing to do with them. It's social conformity in its most degrading way. Society's pushing a message to both the popular and unpopular kids. You're okay, you're fine. Just don't be one of them. It's by pushing the social acceptance to otherwise drastically different groups. The science kids, band kids, and also the popular party goers and the jocks that makes the whole thing so one-sided. You can twist something around to make any one group totally unique compared to everyone else and then use that to ostracize them, to isolate them from the whole. Band kids blow horns all day. That's weird. The basketball players throw a ball into a laundry basket. That's weird. And that's what Eddie is saying here. D&D is just rolling dice and looking at the result. It's no different than anything else, and society's accusing them of all these problems. It's just a load of nonsense. But we're all social creatures. It's human nature to want to be liked and feel a sense of belonging. Many people can't react against that sort of social programming. That's why most D&D players would just keep to themselves. Better to just not talk about it. But Eddie wears a shirt and gets everyone else to wear one too. It might as well be their uniform. He's not going to back down, and I think that's why so many people like him. Not because he vigorously defends the right to roll D20s, but because he is unapologetic on who he is and what he likes. He knows the societal impression is nonsense and doesn't shy away. He's the leader of his group. He has confidence. A lot of confidence, actually. D&D players, often labeled as dorks, have a reputation of getting bullied. We saw this in the earlier seasons. Mike and the kids were getting bullied. Lucas even says part of his desire to be on the basketball team is so he won't be bullied. But the key is that it's just not about being on the basketball team. As Eddie walks down the table calling the others out, you get the impression no one is getting back at him. Eddie may have gone through a lot in his life, but kids didn't really bully him. Even Jason, who yells at him, isn't gonna beat him up after school or anything. When you have the right confidence, which is different from arrogance or pride or being a jerk, the confidence will always earn a sort of respect. There's more to it as well. He has just the right amount of silly that he combines with his confidence that people just don't want to bully him or beat him up or anything. Jason only yelled at him to defend the basketball players, which is actually what Eddie was doing for his D&D players. In this moment, in a weird way, they were similar. That sort of disarming personality is why Eddie could be the D&D kid who doesn't get bullied. It's more than just his leading hellfire as well. Chrissy comes to him for drugs. Granted, everyone thinks it was odd for Chrissy to go to Eddie for anything, but clearly she was willing to. She knew what he had and she went to him for it. There's no scene where she's debating whether or not she even wants to approach him. She asks him off camera. It works because you know he's actually very approachable. So Eddie's reputation in and around the school is a little more complex than a weird guy who plays Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, sure, you could say he's dealing drugs. That's true. But the whole purpose is he's doing it to help a fellow student out. There's nothing nefarious or evil. It's no different than helping someone with their homework, at least through his eyes. He's just helping a classmate get some weed to help with some shit she's going through. Then there's the scene itself. There's a huge cliche in Hollywood to portray any Dungeons and Dragons playing freak as a socially awkward loser who crawls into his shell around any girl and completely loses control at a pretty girl.
Everybody's staring at me.
Don't worry, they're more scared of you than you are of them.
Unlikely.
But Eddie is not like that in any way. He's goofy, he's confident. Just imagine how differently this scene could have been written. It could have been played for cheap laughs at Eddie's expense as he foolishly tries to interact with the popular pretty cheerleader. He would freeze up, say awkward stuff, and all the world would laugh at him. Instead, Eddie wins Chrissy over the same way he wins us over. People may say they like nerdy or dorky guys, but they always mean someone with some self-confidence. And that's why even fans who don't necessarily relate to Eddie or his type still love him as a character. In the end, people like the character with some self-confidence. And self-confidence doesn't mean being an over-pompous asshole, just someone who doesn't freeze up or act weird. He's comfortable in his own skin. That's Eddie. So he talks to Chrissy and wins her over. And here's the thing, it's not flirtatious. He's not trying to get a date with her, put a move on her, or anything. He's just trying to lighten the mood because he can tell Chrissy is stressed out. She's going through some shit. It actually works. Chrissy was just freaking cursed by Vecna, but she lightens up from Eddie's approach. You always appreciate someone who helps you feel better. Now, most of Eddie's arc is that he's on the run because it's all he's ever really done. It was set up from the beginning.
There is no shame in running.
Now, obviously, there's an inherent contrast in the whole plot point. You think of running as cowardly, anti-heroic. But at the same time, everyone knows if you saw this freaky shit go down in your house, you'd probably run too. Like, what the heck just happened? So even though Eddie is hiding, you don't look down on him or think he's a coward. Having confidence in who you are or being able to cheer up the pretty girl while she's having some trouble doesn't mean you won't freak out when the supernatural stuff starts happening. Now, as the audience, we know something is up. These curses are what the show is about. It makes the scene where the gang explains everything to him kind of fun. I mean, how would you take it? It all led him to the climactic moment where he decided he shouldn't run anymore. Those bats could get to Nancy, Robin, and Steve. He wasn't going to let that happen. So after finishing his heavy metal rock concert on the guitar, that'll always be hot for some ladies, Eddie turns around and runs back. It's as heroic a thing as you can do. He charged into a hopeless situation to save his new friends and to protect a town that turned against him. He had nothing to gain and had his life to lose. He did it because he was making his own stand. He wasn't going to run anymore. So in the sense, he did gain his own self-respect back. In the end, that determination, that selfless heroic drive, was the capper on the Eddie love. He had gone through so much and achieved his own personal happiness. As an audience, we always want to see the characters we care about end up happy. Normally, dying doesn't do that. It's tragic. But in this case, Eddie really did die happy.
I didn't run away this time, right?
Eddie Munson solidified himself as the lovable hero. Up next for the hero series, I want to cover Nancy. I think she's an underrated character. If you want to see why Max is the cursed hero of Stranger Things 4, click this video. Otherwise, be sure you're subscribed because there's a lot more great videos coming. Have a great day. I'll see you at the next watch party.